One of the more interesting books of the Bible is Job. And you all are going, wait, I thought we were in the other word, James. Yes, but give me just a second. The story of Job opens with these great sweeping vistas, and it closes with these great sweeping vistas. And the middle of the book has some rough slogging in between. But in the picture that we get at the beginning of the book of Job, you get this picture of God's heavenly throne room. And you have God sitting on the throne. You have all the angels gathered about, and they're doing whatever the business of heaven is. And it says that the Satan comes in. And this is where Satan actually gets his name, is in this kind of throne room thing, because the Satan means the accuser. And so the accuser comes before God, and he says, I want to talk to you about Job. And God goes, Job? I like Job. What do you want to talk to you about, Job? And Satan says, the only reason that Job loves you, the only reason that Job serves you is because he's rich. If you were to take away all of Job's money and all of Job's blessings, Job would not give a fig about you. And God says, I don't think that's true. And Satan says, I got $20 that says it is. And God says, I'll take that bet. And he says, the only thing you can't do is you can't kill Job, but everything else is fair game. And so in some very, very short and terse sentences, everything that Job has is immediately taken away from him. And this is where, if you pay attention, you get some understanding of the antiquity of this book. Job is the oldest story in the Bible. Yes, I know the creation predates that, but the creation accounts are not written down until much later. Nobody even knows when Job was written, but it was the earliest book of the Bible. It was the earliest story that it is told. It is old, old, old. And you can see that in the way that they measure wealth, because it's measured in land, it's measured in cattle, and it's measured in children. And so everything that Job has is destroyed. The land is destroyed, all of his cattle is destroyed. And one of the harder moments in the book is his children are all killed. Now, that's hard, but understand in this context. At the time that Job was written, nobody believed in an afterlife. The only way that you lived on was through your children. So what happens is, not only does Job lose every blessing, all of his wealth, but it's like he never existed. He didn't have children, and it was like Job was never even here. That much was taken away from him. And so Job was left with nothing. Any way that he might have defined himself, I'm a landowner, I'm a rich person, I'm a father of a lot of kids, I got a lot of cows. Any way that he could have defined himself is all taken away from him. The only thing left is God. And in chapter 121, Job says this, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In other words, it all belongs to God. And I praised him in the times of plenty, and I will praise him in the lean times too. Because Job understood that his wealth, that his money wasn't his. Now, it doesn't mean that Job liked it. Job was really annoyed by the whole thing. But the thing that most annoyed Job was his friends. Because his friends thought that the reason all these bad things happened to Job was because Job had sinned. Because bad things happen to bad people. And if good things have happened to you, that means that God likes you. And there's an important note that we need to remember about this story, that having a lot is not a sign of God's blessing, any more than having very little is a sign that God doesn't like you. So Job has a lot of questions about why this has happened to him. And that's the hard slog in the middle of the book, as Job and his friends try and figure this out. But in the last about 4 chapters, we get back to another one of the sweeping vistas, because Job has all of these questions, and finally God shows up, and he never answers Job's question. He just talks about who he is. And go home and read it. It's amazing. It's like God kind of gets lost in himself and spins off into the stratosphere. And ultimately, when God takes a breath, Job says this. Then Job replied to the Lord, I know you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. In other words, I'm sorry that I didn't trust you more. I realize that I made a lot of assumptions. I didn't have all the information about what was going on. And it's been underlined to me that you are trustworthy. So there's some foundational lessons that come from Job. The first is that Job recognized that everything that he had came from God. Secondly, we won't always understand how God is working. And third, and perhaps most importantly, God is trustworthy. So Satan loses his 20 bucks. Job didn't serve God because of the blessings. So here's the question, though. I wonder how the story might have turned out differently if it had been about me or if it had been about you. So why am I talking about Job when our text is James? It's because the earliest story in the Bible is about trust and wealth. The earliest church, because James is writing from the first church ever. They're just establishing this thing. It's the earliest church. The earliest church is dealing with trust and with wealth. And we still struggle with those things too. So now, let's listen to James. With that story from Job as the background, hear the text of James from today. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow you will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. I'm going to stop there, pick up the rest of the passage later. So in these two passages, James is addressing two classes of people. In his context, these are the two classes of people who are wealthy. They're the merchants, the salespeople, the business owners. This is what this passage is addressed to. And the second passage is going to be addressed to landowners. So this passage with merchants, salespeople, business owners, is this going to be a sermon just for business people? No. It's going to be a sermon for anyone who's ever had to make a decision in their life. So if you're not a business person, don't stop listening. And if you are a business person, don't stop listening. So at core, what's wrong with someone saying, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money? I mean, shouldn't we have a business plan? Shouldn't we be looking to expand into new markets? Shouldn't we be planning on where we want our lives to go? Shouldn't we take advantage of the opportunities that lie before us, whether it's college or a job choice or a place to live or a new opportunity across the country? Shouldn't those be things we should be thinking about? What does James have against those things? Well, James isn't opposed to success in business. James isn't opposed to making money. James isn't opposed to planning to make money. James isn't opposed to planning. What James is opposed to is not leaving room for God. What James is opposed to is the underlying belief that we are that good and that we don't need God to ensure our success. James is against the belief that making money is more important than our relationship to God. James is against having a business success and claiming that you had the success because you are that good at what you do. And then when your business has a failure, blaming it on someone else or on God. James is against planning and acting like God doesn't matter or that God doesn't even exist. What James is coming against is this certain arrogance that says, I've got this. And that's why James says, why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What's your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. So there's a couple of things that James would be in favor of. James would be in favor of acknowledging the lordship of Jesus. That in our lives, Jesus is Lord. And so our lives, our blessings, our resources all come from God. And every good gift that we have from God, everything that we have, comes to us not to be the owner of it, but to be a steward of it for the good of God and the good of the people that God loves. We live underneath the lordship of Jesus, and that should change how we look at our lives and how we spend our resources. It should change how we approach life when the outcome is uncertain. Do we acknowledge that Jesus is Lord and that Jesus can help guide us, or do we just trust in our own amazing ability to make plans? James is in favor of acknowledging the lordship of Jesus. James is in favor of being willing to be steered, of opening up our lives to God. I wish I did this every morning, but some mornings I forget. But at my best, when I wake up in the morning before I get out of bed, I say, God, here's my day. And I want to be used by you. I don't want to miss the opportunities where you are at work. So here's my day. Send me where you want me to go. There's this great old phrase in Christian tradition. And Chuck Chapman sends me emails every once in a while, and it always ends with this phrase, Deo volente. It's Latin for, if God wills it. And there's a lot of power in that. I'm going to make these plans, Deo volente. I'm going to do this thing if it's God's will. Now, the Arab tradition has this wonderful word called inshallah, and it means basically, if God wills. And so if you ever talk to a person from an Arab background and you ask them for a decision, if you ask them for a plan or something like that, there's a fair to middling chance they will say, inshallah. If God wills it, I'll do it. It actually colloquially has become this wonderful way to say no. You know, you're like, hey, you want to come over tomorrow? Inshallah. There's no way I'm coming to your house. But it was so much more polite when I said that. So it's this idea of, I'm going to be able to be steered by God. God, here's my day, Deo volente. If you will this, I will follow where you go. James is in favor of being interruptible. Anybody who's ever been in a management position, anybody who's led people knows that a lot of times the real work, the real inspiration, the real opportunity to pour into people's lives comes in the margin, comes in the hallways, comes in the serendipitous encounters with people. I tend to get task-oriented and have, my day all lined up. And I have to remind myself that oftentimes God shows up in the interruptions. That the person who shows up at my door, the person who stops me in Costco, when I have my Costco game face on, sometimes that's the thing that God has for me that day. James is in favor of being interruptible, in making room for the plans of God in our lives. But if you do those things, what if it costs you money? What if it costs you market share? What if you miss a business opportunity? What if your income goes down and you can't keep the lifestyle afloat? And that gets to the heart of the matter. And that's why the lesson of Job is so important, because it's so easy for us to be afraid that God isn't trustworthy. It's so easy to believe that our trust in God is based on our financial success, and that our fear is that if we trust God, it will cost us money. So often we trust our money and then believe in God. So who are you trusting? And maybe one way to look at that is there a discernible difference between the way you look at and spend money now that you have come to know Jesus? How do you look at money and spend money differently than before you knew Jesus? Who's more important to you, Jesus or your financial planner? What strikes more fear in your heart than when you hear 6 months ahead of time that the stock market might go down? We live in such financial fear, even though the Bible says over and over again, don't be afraid. So the issue here is spiritual. It's not material. The issue is our tendency to trust in our instincts, our gifts, our track record, our insights, our intuitions, to trust in our own terms and not leave room for God. That's the issue that James is coming against. Now, because James hasn't gotten up in our business enough, he continues. And these are some, pay attention to this, because these are some of the harshest words in the Bible. Now listen, you rich people. And so he's talking about people who own land. Weep and wail because of the misery that's coming on you. Your wealth is rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your field are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourself in the day of slaughter. You've condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you. So this is to wealthy people whose wealth is primarily tied to the land, and it's different for us now, but those two sources of wealth. And the question is, can you trust God even with your money? And James, like with the merchants, James is not opposed to owning property. James is not opposed to being wealthy. James has nothing against having a lot of money. What James is against is the belief that your security lies in your money. James is opposed to hoarding or not seeing other people's needs or pain. James is opposed to people saying, I've got mine, too bad for you. There's an enormous difference between everything that I have comes from God and I am a steward of it versus I am owed this. I worked hard for this. 2023, Major League Baseball made some rule changes. And I'm a lifelong baseball fan. I'm a lifelong Dodger fan. And I like the rule changes. I think it's good. I think the bigger base bigger bases are good. I like how much the infield can shift and where they can go. I think the pitching clock is one of the greatest things that ever came, except for one or two situations. But the thing that surprises me every single time is that when the game goes to extra innings, they put a guy on second base. And the reason they put the guy on second base is because it's easier to get to home plate if you start on second base. Because basically they want the game to get over at that point, because if you've ever sat through a 19-inning game, you're like, I'm so over this. So in overtime, when you go to extra innings, they put a guy on second base because it's easier. So many of us were born on second base. We just got put there. And we think everybody was put on second base, and not everybody was. When we were out on vacation, I saw this church sign. And usually I don't pay attention to them because usually they say something catchy like all are welcome, really great evangelism technique. But I saw this one church, and the sign said there is a danger of making a living when you could be making a difference. I thought, isn't that true? We can get so caught up in making our living, whatever that looks like for you. Picking the lifestyle you have decided that you want to have, and we put everything into making that living when we could be making a difference. And we miss so much there. In Gig Harbor, there are so many people who have everything and nothing. There's so many people who have not learned that peace and contentment doesn't come from money and stuff and views and waterfront property. Not that there's anything wrong with that, unless we think that's where our security and our happiness comes from. So many people have everything and nothing. Don't be one of those people. One of my favorite words in the English language is the word vapid. Look it up, use it in a sentence this week, come back and tell me how you used it. Vapid means there's nothing there. It's empty. It looks good, but there's nothing there. It's all form and no substance. So many people spend a lot of time leading vapid lives. The form is there, but there's no substance. Building wealth is great. Don't get me wrong. But to what end? What are you going to do with all of that wealth? I mean, I look around, because I have other friends, not just you people, but I look around and it seems like the first priority is to achieve the lifestyle. Pick the Gig Harbor lifestyle that fits you best, that you want. So the first priority is achieve the lifestyle. And then to set aside money for retirement so that we can keep the lifestyle going. And in retirement, it's to maintain wealth so that you can keep the lifestyle going. And everybody that I know in Gig Harbor is running out of money. It's the craziest thing. Everybody thinks that they're going to end up being a pauper, and yet we have tremendous wealth, but we're so afraid we're going to run out of it. That seems to be, for so many people, the first priority. Achieve the lifestyle, maintain the lifestyle. But what we forget is there's a continuum. It's not just two polar opposites of extravagant living and homelessness. I mean, there's a lot there in the middle. And maybe one of the things that God is calling us to is landing on enough. And maybe a little bit more. So the question is, how much is enough? Because if all we're looking is at people around us who are up the ladder, there is never enough. Now, I don't want to get into economic theory this morning. I just don't have the time. I'd be happy to get into economic theory with you, but not this morning. But do people really need hundreds of billions of dollars? When Megan deals with dads who work all day long and come straight from their job in their work clothes because they know that she's passing out clothing in the evening, and they come too late, and the only thing that's left is a dirty t-shirt, and Megan says, I'm too embarrassed to give you a dirty t-shirt, and the dad says, I'm not too proud to take a dirty t-shirt. We have a washing machine, and we're having trouble meeting our needs. Do people really need hundreds of billions of dollars? When I was reading an article the other day, and there's a bunch of Christian organizations that provide housing for people who are unhoused for whatever reason. The uptick that they are seeing now is not people traditionally who are experiencing homelessness. It's not people who are mentally ill. It's not people who are coming out of the penal system. The uptick that Christian organizations that provide housing is finding is single moms and their kids who cannot make ends meet and live on their own. Do people really need hundreds of billions of dollars? Now, this is a rough passage. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You've fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You've condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you. Remember when you thought it was a good idea we were going through James this summer? What is our attitude towards people who are not in the same socioeconomic bracket as us? I'm going to say that again. What is our attitude toward people who are not in the same socioeconomic bracket as us? I don't mean people above us, because I know what our attitude is. It's envy and jealousy. But what about people who are who are lower on the socioeconomic ladder than we are? So let's dial in even further, because this is how I know. I can tell this in one thing about how you view other people, and that is, how do you treat the server in the restaurant? Because how we treat service people, whether it's the waiter or a person in trades or maybe the guy who drives the garbage truck, how we treat them will tell me everything that I need to know. Do we feel condescending towards people who are in low-paying jobs? Do we wonder why they didn't make more of their lives? Why didn't they take advantage of the things that we did? A couple weeks ago, I was over in Tacoma, and I was having coffee at this really funky, cool coffee shop that I didn't know existed. And the woman who was ahead of me in line had a big order, and she was doing things with coffee that I didn't know could be done with coffee. And at one point, I wanted to go, I just want a drip. Can I just skip ahead? But the barista was so kind and so attentive to her order and was getting everything straight and got her all set. And then she said, the woman paid, and then the barista said, there's just one more screen for you, and turned away because, that's the tip screen. And I was close enough to see the woman. And the woman went to custom amount and put in $1. And I almost yelled at the woman, don't work so hard, she's a terrible tipper. It's so easy to make assumptions about people who have less than us, who work at different jobs than we do, that we don't value as much. We have what we have because we worked harder, or we have a better work ethic, or we aren't lazy. And that really shows the underlying attitude that James is coming against of, I have more value. I deserve this. Two people that I know, both very, very successful people, ran organizations that had hundreds of employees. And both of them had just really tragic financial downturns. Both of them lost their businesses. The first person didn't take a salary, liquidated all of the assets, and used the assets to pay the employees in his company so that they had, I think it was 9 months or a year worth of money, and then paid what was left over to the investors in the company. The second person who lost his company took his golden parachute and walked away. Didn't pay a dime to his employees, didn't try to return anything to his investors. Which one of the people do you think was the Jesus follower? It was the guy who took the golden parachute. We have such an opportunity to make a difference, to demonstrate the goodness of God, to show how rich God's blessings have been to us, to help other people. And most of the time, the sacrifice that will be required of us will be minimal. And we'll experience a joy and generosity that's unlike anything else we have known. And maybe you're sitting there and saying, it's mine, and I'll spend it how I want to. And that's right. It is yours. And you are the person that this is written to. There are two more scary passages in the Bible. Verna alluded to one of them in her prayer. It's Luke 12, where Jesus says, much will be required of everyone who has been given much. Even more will be asked of the person who's supposed to take care of much. To whom much is given, much will be required. And then for my money, the scariest passage in the Bible is Matthew chapter 25. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angel. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. As followers of Jesus, what we have to share. You have these things provided by a good God to be used to help other people that God loves. So from the book of James, the very earliest story, the book of Job, the earliest story in the Bible, to the book of James, the story of the very first church, to us, how we handle our wealth is one of the greatest indicators of how much we trust God. So let me ask you 3 questions. Number 1, how has knowing Jesus changed how you view your resources? Number 2, how do you make room for God's plans in your life? And number 3, if someone watched how you treated your server in a restaurant, what would they learn about your attitude toward other people?
Hi, thanks for watching. The people of Harbor Covenant Church really want you to know the love that God has for you, want to grow with you in faith, and want to serve alongside you, not only to help others do the same, but also to make our families and our communities better. If that sounds like something that you can get on board with, then like, follow, and drop us a comment in the video. Watch some more videos on our channel or come visit us on Sunday. You can find out more about Harbor Covenant Church at harborcov.church.